This is actually our very first episode in the brand new studio, even though it's our second episode of the podcast. Keaton the Muscle Hoskins. He started his entrepreneurial journey at the age of 21, starting 35 different companies in different industries as well. The best part about this journey is that he's made over $100 million in revenue in that short space. You probably know him as the Muscle from the Diesel Brothers, or have possibly attended one of the largest Utah business conferences, the Limitless Arena. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Keaton the Muscle Hoskins. All right, welcome to another episode of The Code to Winning. Insights you'll need today to seize the world tomorrow. Today we have a very, very special guest. It's actually the first time I actually meet him in person. He goes by the name of Keaton Hoskins. Keaton started his entrepreneurial journey at the age of 21 years old. He's actually started over 35 different companies in different industries as well. Furthermore, Keaton has made over $100 million in revenue and also hosted one of the greatest and biggest event in Utah in terms of business, the Limitless Arena as well. It's a great pleasure and privilege to host Keaton Hoskins. All right, Keaton, thank you very much for coming in today, sir.
Absolutely.
All right, so I want to just start off on your entrepreneurial journey. I think it started at the age of 21. Mm-hmm. Okay, what led to you being where you are today? What were the very steps and experiences that you actually started from?
So ultimately, and I have this question asked a lot, are you born an entrepreneur or can you become an entrepreneur? And I think the answer is yes to both of those. I was born to be an entrepreneur. And the reason is because I was born to never be able to work for somebody else. I could never work under somebody. I just couldn't do it. It wasn't in my brain to allow somebody to dictate what I did, how I did it, how much money I made. And I realized that from a really, really, really young age. When I was 21, it was completely reinforced. My father, wonderful, wonderful man. He was the go to college, get a degree, 401k, 9 to 5. He worked his way up in a company, and all of my life he preached those things. Go to college, 401k, safety, get a degree, and that's the safe route. And when I was 21, he was 47. He had had health concerns our entire life, all that I can remember all the way back. When I was 21, I got back from my mission. I was a missionary, and within 3 months, he actually passed away. And I spent a lot of time with him on his deathbed. It was about a 2-week period of being on his deathbed where we thought any moment he could go. And in that time, we had a lot of really, really genuine conversations that I didn't ever really have with my father up until that point in my life. But as you get close to death, you become very, very sincere, genuine, and honest. And he told me the regrets he had were not things that he had done, but things that he hadn't done. And that stuck with me. So you won't really regret the things you had done, especially if you had fixed them, if they were mistakes you had made, but you'll regret the things in life that you haven't done. And then he told me how he had felt that what he had taught was a little bit wrong. Because as he was ending nearing the ending of his life at 47, he was really young. He was the CEO of a big company, and they had thrown him away the last year of his life because of his health concerns. They were like, "You no longer serve a purpose. We got to get rid of you." So the safe route that he had taught us from the time I was born until 20 was not the safe route. And he impressed it pretty clearly on my mind that, like, I don't necessarily think that this was the best. And he did it more through action than he did through word. I saw it. Funny enough, I'm the oldest of 5 siblings. All 5 siblings became entrepreneurs. All 5 siblings watched my father preach and teach college, degree, 9 to 5, work your way up, safety, and then saw that didn't work. They saw that even as the CEO, he was thrown away and there was no safety. So he ended up passing away, and as a huge responsibility placed on my shoulders was, hey, dude, you got to step up. One of the things we teach in our faith is that there's a patriarch in a family, right? And the patriarch is the male leader of the family. And the scriptures teach about it, and it goes all the way back. But I realized my father was the patriarch until he died. And that role then rested on my shoulders. As the oldest male, that was my role. And I realized really quickly that the route that I ever would have thought of taking by doing school in 9 to 5 and making money and retiring at 60, it wasn't going to work. I realized really quickly that the role that I was then taking, which I didn't really fully understand at that time, was I'm now the patriarch of my unborn family, my soon-to-be wife, and my family and siblings and my mother. I made some very specific promises to my father, one of which was to take care of my mother. And as he passed away, I realized the necessity for me to raise and level up, to be able to make money, be successful, and most importantly, be a leader, which goes hand in hand with being a patriarch, which, is a completely different subject. A lot of people think when you become a patriarch, you're automatically a leader, and it's not true. And so at that time, I realized all those things. They were reinforced. I spent time on his deathbed, which, by the way, for your listeners, the greatest lessons you'll ever learn are always around death. Like, death is the greatest teacher of all times. The more you spend time around it, think about it, contemplate it, the more you'll be put in a good perspective, which will allow you to learn whatever it is you need to learn. So at 21, I set out to never work for anybody, ever. And at 21, I got back from my mission. I had recently gotten married. I decided I was going to start doing personal training, which I had no idea was really a business by itself. And I immediately felt like I was under somebody's thumb because I was training at a gym where there was an owner, and I felt like that was the thing. So I immediately started one of my first companies, which was called MoFit. It stood for Mobile Fitness.
Does it still exist today?
No, I sold that company a long time ago. But I took trainers and I put them into people's homes, and then they trained people in their homes. So I launched this company. I'm 22 years old. I'm out knocking on doors saying, you don't need a gym, you don't need equipment, you don't need anything except for our program, which is a trainer will come in, teach you how to eat, teach you what to do, give you equipment, and help you work out. So we launched the very first company, and it was very successful. It was very, very successful. I then launched into something a little bit different. It was called Mo Skills, which was mobile skills training for children and teenagers who wanted to get better in their perspective, their sport.
Okay.
And ultimately, from there, launched company after company. I launched a dental office, a plastic surgery clinic, a marketing company, a hard money lending company, an energy drink company, an apparel company. I mean, it just kind of from there sprouted into multiple different businesses, and I've never really stopped.
And I would assume then the same principles that you learned and you gained and experienced from those first few companies, it's easy to just implement that in the next company and the next company and the next company as well.
Absolutely. There's universal laws to having a business. There's universal laws to scaling a business. Every business is different, but you'd be so surprised to find the similarities across the board. There's common denominators. And if I can pick what those common denominators are, if I can actually find out what those common denominators are and then implement them, I can automatically level up any business that I want to do. So I essentially took what I learned from the first business and I implemented into the second, and what I learned from the second into the third, and what I learned from the third into the fourth, all of the things, realizing, not then, but now, there's just common denominators to becoming successful. And the craziest thing, this is the craziest part and why I teach now what I teach, you don't need money to start or buy a business. You don't. You can structure anything you want based around not having money. My first 10 businesses, I started with zero capital, $0.
Wow.
I mean, I started a plastic surgery clinic, and this will just give you a little bit of an example. I started a plastic surgery clinic. My wife at the time wanted to get a breast augmentation. Well, we went into the doctor, sat down, we did the whole thing. Yeah, this is what we want to do, yada, yada, yada. And then as we're getting done, the doctor says to me, what do you do? And I said, I start companies, I build companies. And he said to me, I'm a great plastic surgeon, but when it comes to the business, I really struggle, which I found is a common denominator for anybody. If you have a specific skill you're good at, you're probably not good at other things. Doctors are good at being doctors. Dentists are good at being dentists. Chiropractors are good at being chiropractors, 100%. Not running businesses. So I sat down with him and I said, listen, I would love to partner with you, build a completely separate business and start blowing up your plastic surgery facility. He was like, I love it. Let's do it. So we had the facility. I had the doctor. And I essentially said, hey, dude, clock in and clock out. I'll do the rest. And very quickly, we were doing 50 to 100 breast augmentations out of the facility that I started. Wow. With zero money. And of course, I said to him, hey, this is going to take a lot of investment from the revenue that we create. So everything we create is going to go back into the company. You're not going to get paid for a little while. And he was totally fine with it. He started getting paid 90 days in. I mean, after 150 breast augmentations, it's pretty easy to get paid. But we were taking that revenue as it came in and building more marketing, more infrastructure, more doctors, and then we actually went on. And so I learned really quickly, number one, I was always going to be an entrepreneur. But number two, I could become an entrepreneur without having any money. I had zero money, zero.
That's so interesting.
When my father died, he left me nothing but knowledge. That's it.
Wow. That's very interesting. But in this situation, then, how do you maintain focus and prioritize on each of those businesses? Because, I mean, they require work, they require effort, and it's different industries.
Yeah.
So, like, obviously, do you hire somebody to overlook the entire company after you give the structure of how it's run?
Absolutely. What most entrepreneurs don't understand is it's imperative to create infrastructure immediately. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are lucky, like I wasn't. They have money, and it's easy to build infrastructure and build a company when you have money. It's almost impossible to fail in a business if you have money. The only time you fail is when you run out of money or you don't have any money. Well, I learned really quickly that I needed to do one thing, and I needed to do it really well. And that was create a program, create a business, and then put the correct people in the correct roles to do those things. So immediately I had CEOs, CPAs, COOs, marketing specialists that I would put together in the program that I had started to run it. I didn't have time to do that. And now today I have companies that I actually own. I think I have 5 companies that I own. Mm-hmm. I don't have time to run those companies. So I have CEOs in each company. I have COOs, I have marketing specialists, I have sales guys. Every one of those companies are run. And this is probably the most crucial thing I could tell a business owner. I'm adamant about gaining stats and information and then making the decisions off of that information. Most business owners are making decisions without actual information. Like, how many sales did you have? Where did the sales come from? How much are you selling? How much are you making? As you gather that information, you should be pivoting and making decisions. So now, as the owner of 3 or 4 or 5 companies, I'm collecting information from the people I need to collect it from, and then I'm making decisions. Mm-hmm. So that's essentially what my days consist of, building the companies I have. I'm actually launching a new company.
I saw that on your story.
Yeah. I haven't told anybody. I'm going to be launching a new company. That is a very, very specific supplement. It's one supplement that I think is going to do $1 billion.
Wow.
But it's because I have money now. I have infrastructure now. I have the knowledge now. I'm going to take something to market that's very, very different. And I'm going to launch a new company, and it's going to be phenomenal because I understand these principles.
That's powerful. I noticed you mentioned the story of your dad passing away 3 years after you turned back from your mission. My question, I found that very interesting that you also spoke about how you don't listen to podcasts like that. And so did you have any specific mentors that kind of held your hand and walked you through the process? You were born an entrepreneur, and I believe that. Do you think something added towards that? The Tim Grover example?
Yeah. And hopefully this, I don't know who your listeners are or who they'll be, but I'll be very vulnerable. I didn't have mentors, and I wish that I would have. If you were to ask me what the greatest mistake was I ever made, it was that I did everything without having a mentor. I would most likely be a billionaire today if I would have had a mentor from the time I was 20 to 30. I almost can guarantee I would have. But, and this is where I tell you I'll be very vulnerable. I learned as a missionary how to have a very, very powerful relationship with God. And in my relationship with God, I firmly, firmly believe if he's the truth, if he's the center of all truth, that he would also be willing through revelation to give me what I needed. I spent a lot of time, not even nearly as much as I do now, which isn't good, in conversations with God. You know, I spent a lot of time praying about decisions that I would make, decisions that I needed to come up with that I didn't have answers with. So to say I didn't have a mentor is true, but I did have what I believe to my core was somebody I could go to for answers that would guide me in being able to do what I needed to do what was more important than I even understood at that time, which was to take care of the people in my atmosphere. That's right? Powerful. My children, my siblings, my mother, my wife, all of those things. And the truth is, God's our Father. He loves us. We're heirs to him. And if that's really the truth, he wants us to be successful. I spend a lot of time with people that don't understand the principle of God wants you to be rich because he wants you to be successful, because he wants you to progress, because he wants you to be happy. There's never a time that you're going to return and go, I was broke and poor, and he's going to go, good job, man. There's no nobility in being poor. The best version of you is becoming like me, your Father, God. And if God were to come down here, he would create a business that would make money, that would provide for him, and he would be crazy successful at it. He just would. So if that's who he is and I'm heir to him, why can't I have those same things?
That's so powerful.
Which is a principle that I think is really important. One of the things I teach, I do a lot of one-on-one mentoring. One of the principles I teach is that you need to have 5 pillars in your life that you focus on 24/7. You need to be physically healthy, mentally healthy, emotionally healthy, spiritually healthy, and financially healthy. That 5th one is a pillar that rests on the first 4. So when I sit down and mentor with someone who's an uber rich person, which I do all the time, and they're unhappy, they have horrible relationships, they've destroyed every aspect of their life, guess what? They built the 5th pillar without the first 4. So that pillar is easy to fall, and it doesn't mean anything. So in understanding those 5 pillars, if I can attack those 5 pillars and aggressively or savagely become better in every single one of those aspects, every piece of my life will succeed, which being an entrepreneur is just one little piece of that success. And that's essentially what I'll spend the rest of my life teaching people.
That is so powerful. I want to just liken that to a very important doctrine that we learn that our God is our loving Heavenly Father. We are literally the offspring of Heavenly Father. In other words, we have divine potential to reach our full potential. And I feel like that kind of links that term limitless.
Yeah.
And because when I first saw that title, I thought you got that from the movie Limitless.
Yeah. Which I love that movie. I love that movie.
But I feel like, we as God's children, we come on earth, but we set our own boundaries. And then, we can't break through those boundaries eventually till we go through the next step as well. Is
exactly.
That can you talk about
100%? And I'll give you a pre to what I'm going to be speaking on at the event.
Yes, please.
When I decided that I wanted to start helping people, I needed to come up with the name. And it was really easy for me to write a list of my core values and my ethos, what spoke to my core, right? And the first biggest thing that speaks to my core is that I have a Father that's perfect, that's a God. And if he's my Father and I'm heir to him, then what are my limits? There are none. There's no limit. And the truth is that as soon as I can just begin to comprehend that, and my mind can conceive that, I can achieve anything I want. Anything. From today until the day I die, I am a creator of my entire universe, just like he is. And what he created, I can create. And if he can create that, I can create this. So when I sit down with someone and say, what do you want? Number 1, if they don't know what they want, they can't create it. Number 2, if they don't believe it, they won't create it. So I realized in naming what this program, Limitless Society, I wanted people to understand the principle of limitless, which was you are limitless. Everyone is. And what if all I do the rest of my life is spend my time getting people to open their eyes to see themselves as God sees them?
Wow.
Which is a limitless human being that has the potential and ability to create all that they ever desire. That's why I created Limitless Society, was to teach those things, preach those things, integrate those things with people everywhere. We go through day to day and we see people all over the world who have limited themselves because they don't believe, they can't comprehend. If all I want to do is change that, I need to get you to open your eyes to see who you really are. And who you really are is heir to a God in heaven who wants you to have what he has. And that's how Limitless Society started. That's where I named it. And that's essentially the core, the principle to what we do and what I teach and what we are in Limitless Society. One of the greatest things, and this is the pre speech, I don't really prepare speeches, but I am thinking very hard on this Limitless Arena, April 27th. What is it that I want to share with people? And it's a really, really simple idea. If we go all the way back in the scriptures and we follow the life of Christ, whether you're a Christian or not, you have to have respect for that man.
100%.
Whatever he did, whether you believe he's a God or not, doesn't matter. I'm going to go off of the basis that all of us should believe that was a good man. He had good influence. He did a lot of good things, right? If you follow his life, he teaches a million different things, but there's one specific principle that I'm trying my best to wrap my head around. At one point, when he's sitting with the most well-to-do Pharisees, Sadducees, scribes, he at some point sits down in the midst of them and he says, bring your children to me. He gathers his children and he puts them all in front of him and he begins to teach. And one of the first things he teaches is he says, become as a child. And I have dove into this idea really deep as of late. This is what I want to be teaching at the event. Become as a child. And one of the things in our faith is he did it again, right?
Yeah.
And he says it differently. He gathers the children and he says, behold your children. Behold. He didn't say look. He didn't say observe. He said behold. What does that mean, to behold? That was a powerful word for me. What does it mean to behold? It means to look into them and see what it is they have and are and do, because I should become like them. And then later on, he says, only the children of God will inherit his kingdom.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if I break that down, there are actual pieces that show me who I should become. And I have a whole list, right? I have a list of 6 things that I have 5 daughters, so I'm pretty good at observing and beholding children. One of the main things, and this will be one of the topics I really want to talk on and teach at Limitless Arena, is why did he tell us to become like children? He was surrounded with doctors and lawyers and well-to-do smart men and women. Why did he tell all of them, hey, you must become as these children? Well, my number one, and what I see in every one of my children, and when I say children, I mean very young. He didn't gather teenagers. He didn't gather adolescents. He gathered children. That age is probably from 1 to 5. All children exude principles that we should learn. The one that I have picked that I think most people should begin to fathom and understand is, do you have children?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, you'll learn this one day. You'll learn this. Children have a delusional sense of grandeur. It's one of the most beautiful things in the entire world. It's one of the greatest things that you could actually take in. When you talk to a child, there is no limitation in their mind.
100%.
They have this delusional thought of what they're doing, where they're going, what they're going to become. And the worst part is that only over time, teachers, parents, and peers, they learn limitations. It wasn't given to them. What was given to them was this delusion of grandeur. Children believe they can do and have and be anything. So when he said become as little children, it was clear. He was really saying to me specifically, Keaton, you see your 2-year-old that is filled with delusions of grandeur? She has no limitations. You must become like her. And in that, you will begin to create a platform in which you can build anything you want to build. For example, Elon Musk.
100%.
He wants to put people on Mars. That's the most delusional thing I've ever heard in my life.
And he's going to do it.
And in 20 years, he's going to do it.
He's going to do it.
One of my favorite things in the whole world is to fly a helicopter. At some point in the 1800s and early 1900s, some delusional human being looked into the sky, saw the birds, and said, I want to fly where they fly. And everyone around him was like, that's delusional. That's the most delusional thing I've ever heard. You can't fly with them. You might be able to float, but you're not going to be able to fly with them. Well, guess what? Today, I get to leave my front yard, get into a contraption that allows me to fly like birds. Because at some point, someone was delusional enough in the grandeur of things that they were able to build something that now allows us to fly. And now every day, thousands and thousands of people are flying all over the world. So if I were to take this principle, become as children, the number one thing that I want to teach people is children are delusional in what they're going to do and be and become. And at some point, every single one of us got talked out of our delusions by our teachers, our parents, our peers. And that is where we went wrong. What we seek is true and can happen, but it can't happen if I don't have a sense of delusion. So what does it mean to become a child? Become delusional again. You want to be an entrepreneur, but you don't think you can make money. Well, what if the delusion is you're going to become a billionaire? And people do it every day. People start from nothing, build a business, and become a billionaire because at some point they were delusional enough to believe that they could do it. So for me, that's a principle that carries a lot. And there's obviously other things that I have as for what it meant to become as a child, but that's number one. And that's something I want entrepreneurs and people all over the world. It's time to accept that at one point in our lives, we were pure and we were, as Jesus said, a child, that we should become like them again, which is a weird thing. It's like we're going to go backwards. Well, no. You were here and everything you've gained, you've lost. You got to go back to that. Go back. This little 2-year-old that's wandering around that thinks they can walk on water, they're delusional. But that's what it takes to become successful. You know what my delusion is? My delusion is I'm going to be so successful and do everything I've ever wanted to do on this earth. Everything. Maybe go to Mars. Maybe own everything. Whatever it is. But I can't do it if I first don't accept that it starts with delusions of grandeur. And that's a principle I hope to impress upon the minds. That event hopefully is going to have 10 to 12,000 people there. That's the first principle that I want to talk about because that's what it takes. And the more you understand that, the easier it's going to be to accomplish anything you want to accomplish.
That is very, very powerful. And just to add on that as well, I think within our faith, there's one of the kings that actually said, be as humble, submissive, meek, just as a little child as well, because they want to be an astronaut. They want to be a pilot. They want to be a doctor. They want to be this. They want to be 4 different stuff and, in different days as well. It's just that they just have that delusional excitement and that they can achieve everything as well. Mm-hmm. And the reason I also add that, I have a great father who just implemented those principles from a very, very young age. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that like when other people didn't have the same sort of surrounding where my dad actually instilled the belief in me. Just a small example, like when I first came in America 2017, before I moved here full time, we were touring New York, we were touring Nevada, we were touring Utah, and I gave him a call. I'm like, I want to just come here. I want to study here. And him supporting those dreams and seeing a vision that I see makes such a big difference. Mm-hmm. Okay. But now why I'm leading to this is the fact that when people want to join the Limitless Society, they are often sometimes, maybe there's someone out that's listening that's on edge. Like, I want to become an entrepreneur, but 9 to 5 is easier. I want to take that first step, but it's way too risky. Yeah. Like, what's the message you want to relate to those people that are on edge, on the fence, a little lukewarm, want to take that step, but are fearing it could fail?
So 2 things. Number 1, I don't want to tell the world that you have to be an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of successes in this life that don't mean being an entrepreneur. I know my father-in-law is the CEO of Kroger and Smith's grocery store. He worked his way up from a bagger at 16 to now he's 55, 60, and he's the CEO. He makes so much money. He makes way more money than a lot of entrepreneurs that I know. Entrepreneurship is only one way. And I want to be clear in my distinction that becoming who you want to become isn't always tied to being an entrepreneur. So there is a lot of people who are like, I don't know if that's for me. That's okay. That's okay. But here's what I would say to that question. I'm scared to take steps. I'm scared to fail. When we started, I told you that the greatest teacher is death. And to those people asking that question, I would ask them to contemplate a very, very serious moment in their life, and that is their deathbed. At some point, we're all going to die. I could go tomorrow. This could be my last podcast. And at some point, if I can begin to contemplate my death, the death of those around me, it will give me perspective. What is that perspective? It is this. You should be more scared about the things that you will not accomplish because you were too scared of accomplishing them. That at some point when you lay on your deathbed, like my father, your regrets are not going to be the things that you did. It's going to be the things you didn't do because you feared doing them. And that time will come and go. This life is short. Taking risks and accomplishing things is not what you should be scared of. Mm-hmm. You should be scared of living a mediocre life. Because at some point, and this is my greatest fear, at some point, we are going to end this life. And when we end this life, it is my belief, this is not doctrine, this is not gospel, anything. This is my own belief. I truly believe that we will stand in front of two people, God and the greatest version of ourselves. Now, people talk about hell and heaven all the time. I think it's a little bit different. Let me tell you what hell would be. Hell would be looking in the eyes of my greatest version and knowing that that's what I could have become, and instead I am a pale comparison of that person. Because I wouldn't take risks, because I was scared, because I was too confused, because I let fear paralyze me. I'm looking at the human I could have become, and I'm nowhere near that person. That would be hell. But rather, and this is what drives me, the day I pass, I'm going to look at Keaton and the greatest version of Keaton, and I'm going to look him in the eyes and tell him, I became you. I did everything to become the greatest version of myself. It was hard. It was not easy. But nothing's easy. Even being broke and poor. That ain't easy.
That's true.
So pick the things that make the most sense, which is to become the greatest version of yourself. What you should fear is not what is to come if I take risks. What you should fear is what you won't become because you can't take the risk because you're too afraid to become that human being. What is Limitless Society? It's summed up in one thing. It's becoming the greatest version of yourself. The greatest version of yourself is a phenomenal father. It's a phenomenal husband. It's a phenomenal business owner. It's a rich, successful human being that cultivates beautiful relationships, that has every single thing that they ever desired in this life. Because this life was given to us from a loving father for us to come down and experience. And in our experience, we'll have failures and we'll have pain, but on the opposite end of that, we'll have joy and peace and love, all of those things in which we will not experience if we decide to just stay safe, just do enough, just become good enough. I'm a good version of who I could be, but I'm not the greatest version of me. And I don't want to look that person in the eye one day. I really don't. Wow. And tell him, holy shit, you're a billionaire. You have a beautiful relationship. You have beautiful children. You have all of everything you've ever desired. And I'm a pale comparison of that. I don't want to do that. And that's where my fear moves me into doing something much greater than even now I'm currently doing. I don't want to look that person in the eyes. Heaven and hell is that moment when I see what I should and could have become, and I'm nothing compared to that human. Because there will be no excuses left. You'll stand in front of him or her and in front of God, and God's going to look at you and say, I have nothing to say to you. That's who you were supposed to become, and you didn't. That's the greatest version. That's why I sent you down here. That's what you were capable of, and you missed the mark. And you only missed it not because you weren't capable, but because you were too scared to do what it took to become that human being.
I love that. I think that's also very you can liken that to the parable of the talents eventually, because Heavenly Father does bestow on us talents. Sometimes we discover them, at a later stage in our life. But if you don't literally enhance and actually practice what He's given you, you'll look back and be judged on the last day as well. So I appreciate that a lot. Now I want to shift this again slightly towards a different topic. We're going to touch on Limitless Society again towards the end as well, because I'm going to be joining too. However, I want to talk a bit more about, where they say like your network is your net worth. I've noticed that your network is phenomenal. Like you have connections in various like places. Literally everyone. You can pick up the phone right now and call probably Donald Trump. Actually, Don Jr. is going to be at the. I saw that.
Yeah.
So my point is, why I wanted to relate this thing. Why is it important to establish like those relationships? And then the next question I want to talk about is those non-transactional one with the example about you and Tony Robbins. But just the first question is just why is it important to establish those like networks like right now?
So I would tell you I'm rich because of those relationships, but not in the way that sounds. I'm not telling people I'm rich financially because of those relationships. I'm rich because of those relationships. That's what makes me rich. The most important thing I've learned over the last 35 years of my life is the most important thing you'll do on this earth is to cultivate true and real and everlasting eternal relationships. Your marriage, your relationship with your children, your friends who become your family, your relationships and those memories you get from those relationships, that's all you're taking with you. That's the true riches. The true riches is the ability to connect and create a relationship that is so worth it that it goes into the eternities. The people that I meet, the people that I have in my life are only those people. I tell people this all the time. I don't have friends. I have family or I have acquaintances. That's it. And you fall into one of those categories. You're either my family or you're just an acquaintance I know of. And those relationships, all of them, at some point become one of those two categories. You're either part of my family or we just know each other. And so when people say your net worth or your network is your net worth, the truth is the greater value you bring to people and the greater that relationship is, the easier the opportunities are to make money. That's what they're talking about. So if I create a relationship that is so powerful and wonderful that in that relationship, that human being enjoys it so much that as opportunities come to them, they automatically think of me, those create opportunities in my life. So everybody in my circle, I make sure, as that second question, I'm a non-transactional character because in that they realize their value and my value is most important. And the value that I bring to them is that relationship. It's not the money. It's not the fame. It's the actual relationship. All too often I hear people say, I'm going to a networking event. Well, what are you going to do? I'm going to pass out cards, tell people who I am, and shake their hands. That's the worst advice I've ever heard. I love Brad Lee, but he says something very backwards. He says, the more hands you shake, the more money you make. I don't think that. The more valuable relationships you create, the more money you make. I've shaken a lot of hands of people I don't want anything to do with. I've shaken a lot of hands with very successful people I don't want to do business with and I don't want in my network. But the creation of a relationship that is into the eternity, so valuable that without money, without fame, without all the important things that we think, it comes down to how is our actual relationship? That's what creates true value to me.
The Winning Store, in collaboration with my podcast, The Code to Winning, I have started a merch store called The Winning Store. We sell high quality merchandise in terms of shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, caps, phone cases, high quality tumblers as well. The best part about The Winning Store is that we believe in delivering nothing less than excellence. With a keen eye for quality and a passion for style, we curate products that ensure that you always emerge victorious in your fashion game. Are you ready to win? Well, shop right now today at winning.store. Remember, in this game of life, the only way to lose is to stop playing. Here at the Winning Store, we're all about playing to win. So visit us today, winning.store. Get your merchandise today and stay victorious. And then, sorry, before we actually go to the second question, thank you very much for that. I want to know, because my audience are going to be mostly salesmen, mostly students, mostly new entrepreneurs. That's going to be my audience. But how can those people, including myself, how can we add more value to more successful people like yourself? Because what I do when I usually interview people, for instance, I'm going to join the Limitless Society, and I still don't think it's enough of a repayment for you being here. You know what I'm saying? So, but I'm at the point, how can I add more value to more successful people? Does that make sense? When you're not really at that level yet.
So, and this is where it will lead into non-transactional character, just so you know. I spoke on this just 2 weeks ago in Limitless Society, talking about becoming a non-transactional character. A transactional character is what 99.9% of the world is. Everybody wants to give and take. They want to make a transaction. Oh, you're famous. Cool. I'll pay you and I need you to post for me. Or I know if I do work for you, you'll pay me money. I know if I pay you, I get this product in return. It's all transactional. True value from a human being who doesn't have money is creating a non-transactional relationship. There's a book, most people know the book. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. In that book, it talks about a universal law of what does everybody want? And if I understand what everybody wants, I can then become valuable to everyone. But what does that want? Every human being on this planet only wants one thing, or everything they say they want comes down to one thing. It's to feel important. It's the feeling of importance. That's what they want. If I understand that principle, I can aid in their want. And it doesn't always tie financially. It just doesn't. I don't need to give you money to make you feel important. Mm-hmm. But if I step into our relationship and I'm a non-transactional character and I can help you feel an importance, you're important to me, I can create value to you without actually giving you any financial means to that value. I had a lot of people on the phone call. I talked about Tony Robbins and how I added value, you know, and a lot of the questions were, well, how do I add value if I don't have any money? And it was a simple answer. There's two things. Two really simple principles. Understand what people want, which we know is importance, and understand that everybody in that wants to tell the world about how important they are. In any relationship I start, it's very apparent to me that you think you're important and that you tell me about how important you are. Mm-hmm. Anytime I go to a networking, it's always, oh, well, this is what I do. This is the business I have. This is how much money I make. This is how famous I am. This is how many followers I have. But how often do you walk into any type of interaction and listen? And when I say listen, I mean genuinely listen to them. And as you listen, you find out what makes them feel important. And when you find that out, you've been given the key to become valuable to them.
Okay.
And you've been given the key to make them feel what they need to feel in the relationship that you seek. So every person across the board, when I get into a relationship, the very first thing I listen. And most people don't do that. So how do I add value to somebody without having any money? I become the only person in their life that listens to them. And from listening, I take into me what is important to you and what makes you feel important. And it's not always money. There's so many other things. So when I start a relationship, if I realize this, you want to feel important and you want to be heard, I'm going to listen to you and then I'm going to make you feel important in the ways that make you feel important. And then I become valuable to you. Why? Because nobody else does that. Nobody. The truth is the whole world wants to do transactions and tell you how important they are. So what if I do neither of those? What if I have no transactional importance? Nothing. I don't want anything from you. I just want to add value to you. Well, how do I add value? I listen to you and I gain from you what gives you value. I already know that you want to feel important. And in listening to you, I find out how to do so. The more I listen to people and I hear those things, that's when I integrate that whole principle. All right, I know exactly how this person needs to feel important, and I'm going to add to that. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's just doing something. You'd be surprised that adding value to people is very rarely money. I spend a lot of time in a lot of different circles, very, very high-end circles, very low-end circles. In the high-end circles where money is abundant, there's no value to them to add money to their life. There's not. But I'll tell you what there is. There's value in being the first person that they meet that doesn't want anything from them, that doesn't need anything from them, and only wants to add value to them. One of my greatest relationships with Logan Paul, Logan's going to be a billionaire one day. And when I spent time with him, I immediately found out what makes him feel important. I was one of the only people in the room of 20 guys when we were first meeting that wasn't asking him for something. I was just listening. And in listening, I heard something. He said, I'm getting ready to do some jumping out of airplanes, and I want to get my solo skydiving thing.
License.
Okay. And I heard that. And I said, hey, dude, I got you. He's like, what do you mean? I said, well, I got a helicopter. You need to jump 22 times. Let's meet, and you can jump out of my helicopter 22 times in a day. You can get your license. He was like, oh, that's awesome. I love it. Well, guess what he automatically assumed? How much money am I going to have to pay Keaton to do this? How much time am I going to have to dedicate to Keaton from this? Well, I asked for nothing. We met in Moab, Utah. Mm-hmm. I flew my heli down there, which costs a lot of money. It's not cheap to fly.
Fuel, right?
Yeah, just fuel. I mean, maintenance and fuel. It costs about $1,700 an hour to run my helicopter.
Wow.
Okay. I meet him down there. We jump out of my helicopter. I think it was like 18 times the first day. We had a great time. I never once asked him for anything. I never once asked for any type of transaction. Instead, I began to add more value. In spending time with him, he told me his body was beat up. Oh, dude, I'm always getting beat up. I'm in WWE. I'm doing all these things. I said, I get it, man. He told me that he was headed home and that he didn't have a place to stay. So I said, listen, dude, you and your dad, I'm very good friends with his dad. His dad's actually in Limitless Society. I said, why don't you guys go back? I'm not heading home yet. I'm going to stay down here. But why don't you go back to my house? You guys can hang out there, spend time there. There's nobody there until you guys leave. And they're like, yeah, dude, we love it. We appreciate that. That's really great. Well, I called my doctor. I said, hey, I want you to go to my house and I want you to bring stem cells to my house. Mm-hmm. And I want you to shoot Logan up with stem cells. I want you to shoot his dad up, like give them stem cells. Now, for those of you who don't know, stem cells are expensive. They're like $2,000 for one shot. He said, how many do you want? I said, give him as many as he wants. I didn't call him again. I didn't talk to him again. I said, go up there. I'll pay for everything. Give them what they want. Send them on their way. I think he spent, 10 hours at my house just hanging out, lounging around. Nobody bugged him. Doctor came up, gave him stem cells. I didn't text him again. 2 days later, Logan found my number, texted me. Hey, man, I just wanted to tell you thank you. I know, you have a million things going on, and so do I, but it really meant a lot. You didn't once ask me to pay for your helicopter. You didn't ask me to pay for staying at your house, and you didn't even ask me to pay for stem cells. All you did was bring value, and you've never once asked for anything. I just wanted to send you a text. I'm really, really grateful for you. That was the text I got from him.
Wow.
So that's how we started our relationship. I never asked for anything. Now, here's the other piece. Most people think, okay, well, then at what point do you ask for something, right? Like, well, I'm creating a relationship. How do I ask? I never did. To this day, I don't ask for anything. And if I do ask for something, there's always payment attached. My daughter, who's 12, she's a huge fan. All young kids are huge fans of Logan Paul, right? Yeah. I text him and I said, hey, man, how much would you charge me to do a FaceTime with my daughter and tell her happy birthday? I didn't ask for a favor. I said, how much would you charge me? What was it, $50 for a 10-minute call, whatever? And he goes, are you kidding me? No, you're not charging me. I'll call her. Just call me when that time is. So, of course, my daughter has her birthday party at my house. There's like 25 of her kids, her friends there. And I surprised her. I said, hey, somebody wants to tell you happy birthday. So I FaceTimed Logan. Logan jumped on. Hey, Taya, really, really nice to meet you. All of her friends losing their minds. Logan Paul called you. Hey, I just wanted to wish you happy birthday. It was one of the coolest experiences ever. I didn't ask for anything. I didn't even call him and say, hey, man, because I did all that stuff, will you do this for me? I said, hey, man, now that we have a relationship, I want to ask you to do something, and your time's valuable, so I want to pay for it. He was like, absolutely not. Because he realized that I had given so much at that point that he obviously wanted to give back. And I didn't have to ask for anything. Those are the types of relationships that you should be creating. A non-transactional relationship, and the value that I bring, I never stop bringing, and I never ask for anything in return. One of the greatest things I'm able to do is cultivate those relationships and help them understand. Number one, you're important to me. Number two, I don't need anything from you, and I don't want anything from you. I just want our relationship. And in that, I've been able to build the relationships and the networks that I have. And it's that simple.
Wow. I actually haven't heard this story before. Like I said, I listened to about maybe 11 or 12 podcasts, and I've heard the one of Tony Robbins, but I haven't heard the Logan Paul one. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. There was an entrepreneur that said a quote. I loved it. I think it was Ed Milet. He said, "There is a moment every boy realizes someone isn't coming to save them. And that's the moment they become a man, and some will not reach there, and they remain children forever." And I listened to that like 3, 4, 5 times, like when I was driving. We face a lot of tribulations in this life, and we know, obviously, because of our religion, that tribulation work with patience, patience experience, and so forth as well. How important are trials? I mean, like I said, I've listened to all your stuff, and I think you were once at a my favorite was when you at a jail, and you were talking to the convicts over there and just giving your experience and so forth as well. How can we shape tribulations to help break those personal barriers, personal limitations, and personal records?
Number one is you must understand that it is a necessity of life. Most people think that when something bad happens, it's happening to them and not for them. You must shift your mindset out of this idea that I become a victim to things that are trials and tribulations. That's not true. You're actually being blessed with them. One of my favorite things I heard Tony Robbins say, he said, what if we were grateful for all of it? What if we were grateful for the trials and the tribulations, the pain and the suffering, as much as we were the joys and the peace and the success? And what he was teaching was this principle of mindset. What if we understood that it's all happening for us? Trials and tribulations are given to us so that we can learn from them, and in our learning, we can become better from them. If I understand that, if my mind is changed in that, I no longer become a victim to my current situation of trial or tribulation, but rather a student in my trial. The Old Testament tells us that there is a refiner's fire. And this is one of the most beautiful, beautiful stories ever. Trial and tribulation is fire. And we understand that God is the refiner, right? Well, it's really simple principle to understand the story that the way that gold and silver is refined is through fire. Fire burns off impurities and imperfections. What most people don't know about that story is that the way that the refiner does it, they'll put the gold or silver at the end of a pole, and they'll put it into the fire, and they just sit and slowly turn it and turn it and turn it. In that fire, that gold and silver is purified through the fire, which we know is trial and tribulation. What we do understand about that story is that it hurts like hell and that we don't want to be there. But the piece that we don't understand in the story is that if we pull ourselves out of that fire, we ruin ourselves. And if we're left in too long, we get ruined. So number one, I realize there's never going to be a trial and tribulation that is going to be too much fire that ruins me. I already know the refiner is not going to do that. He's not going to leave it in and go, oh, I burned it. Sorry, it's not going to happen. But the second piece of if I pull myself out, which most people do, they want to pull themselves out of pain and discomfort and trial and tribulation. If I realize that the process is a process to purify me, I understand that I must become a student of that process. And if that process is done correctly, I come out purified, better, a better human, a better person with greater talents and greater skills and greater knowledge. Now, here's for me why it becomes so beautiful. The refiner, to check if the gold and silver is perfectly refined, they pull that stick out of the refinement of the fire and they look in it. And when they can see their perfect reflection, they know that it's done. So for us, if God is the refiner and he places us in the fire of trial and tribulation, and we know he's going to pull us out when it's time to be pulled out, when he pulls us out, we will have his countenance in us. We will reflect him. We will look like him. We will be like him. So all too often, we as human beings, we look at trial and tribulation like this is the worst thing ever, when rather our mind should be saying, how honored should I be that I should go through this? Because through this is the only way for me to become what I seek. And what I seek is to be the greatest version of me. It's to become like God. It's to be like him. So if I change my mindset, I'm able to endure the fire in which I'm placed. Why is mindset so important? Why is Limitless Society teaching about mindset so important? Because if I walk into the fire knowing that there's a purpose for it and there's a reason for it, I don't pull myself out. Whereas the majority of the world, we become victims. And in our victim mentality, we say, why is this happening to me? How long is this going to take? I don't want to do this anymore. And I learn nothing. And then I pull myself from it. And when I pull myself from it, I am ruined continually and continually and continually. And all that God, the refiner, seeks is to purify us. So stop looking at trial and tribulation as something that is happening to us. It's happening for us.
Wow, that's so powerful.
And if you understand that, everything changes.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So, like I told you earlier before we started the podcast, I run a small team in Idaho that sells solar as well. I know you have a variety of different students and different levels in the society. You probably have people that are already in sales. And one of the stories I like, you said a student of yours was actually a barber and you went to go get your hair cut and stuff like that. The reason I'm asking, with different levels to people, like you have very established entrepreneurs and ones that are just off in the surface and, getting to know themselves as well. How does the Limitless Society help students that are in different levels get to the next level? Because everything's a gradual process. How does it?
Understanding that there's levels is also understanding that there's levels of investment into a human, right? I have noticed that there's a very close direct tie to those who are at a specific level for how much they're willing to invest into their growth. So there's obviously different entry levels. Limitless Society is $297 a month.
That's a bargain.
$300 a month to be in a group, to be taught, to learn the principles that I must to then become successful. That's cheap. Those people are at a certain level. They're just finding out. They're scratching the surface of becoming who they want to become. They're just learning small, simple principles. And then from there, that next step, obviously, is getting closer to me and learning more and investing more. I go all the way down to one-on-one time where I spend an hour with somebody to go over this. That one-on-one mentoring is anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 an hour. Well, those people that are spending $3,000 to $5,000 to make themselves better compared to the people who are spending $297, it's a different caliber and a different level of a person. I've learned one of the greatest principles ever is the more I spend, the more committed I am, and the more that I seek to do whatever it is I'm spending 100%. My money on. So in that, Limitless Society is simple. Like, you want to spend $300 a month? That's the level at which you are. You want to spend $1,000 an hour? You want to spend $100,000 a year? That's the level in which you are. You dictate to me what level you are. Right now, that level never stops. People ask me all the time, well, how much do you spend? I spend millions of dollars a year to do what I need to progress, whether that's spending time with Ed Milet, whether it's spending time with Tony Robbins. I've spent millions of dollars, and that's the level at which I am. So now I've noticed the higher I raise my price, the easier it is to find the people that are at the levels that want to level up faster, better, more efficiently. So when I meet with somebody and I say, how badly do you want to change? It always is a direct reflection on how much they're willing to spend to change. The truth is we all understand that concept. Every one of us were born and told to go to school, to go to college. Those who go to a 4-year general, they pay a little bit of money for college. Those who go into a specialty pay a little bit more. Those who go to the highest levels of college pay a ton more. And those who pay the most are the ones who make the most. So we fully understand that the system of college is where we should be investing. But we don't realize that that same system applies to personal growth and development. If I seek to become greater than I currently am, I can tell you at which level I am by how much money I'm willing to invest to become something greater. So when people come to me all the time, oh, I'm really wealthy, I'm super successful, and I go, okay, well, these are my programs. And they go, oh, that's too much money. I automatically know they're not at the level at which they're playing. They just aren't. Because I can turn around in the same day and have a different conversation with someone and say, yeah, I've been pretty successful in my life. I really want to go to the next level. And I go, okay, it's $150,000 to mentor with me. Okay, here you go. Here's the money. Oh, okay. That's a different level of a human being than the person who's on the fence going, I just can't find $300. The truth? You spend $300 on stupid shit every single month that doesn't do anything for your progression. You do have the money. What you don't have is the right mindset and the level and whereabouts to know you're playing here, dude, and you want to be here, but you're not willing to take the investment, time, and energy to get there. That's the true answer. So in Limitless, that's essentially what's set up. I mean, those levels all the way through.
And one of the things I noticed since being in America, this is the capital of capitalism. You know, there's so much opportunity to make money. And worst case scenario, you can be like from DoorDash to Uber, to sales, to getting a business, to scaling, you know, to the next level as well. And I've noticed as well that many people are so skeptical of paying coaching fees. And to some degree, I do understand with the amount of fake gurus that are out there as well, right? But from your experience, I mean, you have a connection with some of the best coaches like the Tim Grovers as well. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you're still doing coaching yourself. Since you've made it without coaching, is it possible to make it without coaching?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I tell everybody that. Everybody says, do I have to have you to succeed? No.
But it's a shortcut, right?
That's the answer.
Okay.
What I'm paying for is to turn years into months and months into days. That's what I'm paying for. What I learned in the last 15 years, I would have learned in 15 months if I would have paid somebody to tell me and teach me and coach me. That's what it is. Now, there are some people that without a coach, they will never, ever be able to get to where they need to. Those are very few people, but there are people that way. So when people come to me and say, do I have to have you? No, you don't. You can learn what I'm going to give you in the next 15 to 20 years. Do you want to be a millionaire in the next 15 or 20, or do you want to be a millionaire next year? What's your choice? It's very simple. I love the skepticism, because you should be skeptical. But you shouldn't be skeptical on how much to pay. You should be skeptical on who to pay. So people ask me all the time, how do I find the right mentor? Well, that's kind of a simple one. Find someone who has what you want and ask them how they got it. Don't go to people who are cool. Don't go to people who have big influence. Don't go to the people who are waving in your face all their great things. Go to the people that you see the life they have and you go, I want that life. I want exactly what he has. The people that I mentor at some point or another have seen my life and said, I want that and I want it quicker than it took him to get there. It took me 15 years from the time I was 20 to 35 to get there. But I can show you how to get there in 15 months. So what do you want? You should be skeptical on who you pay your money to, but not how much money you pay, because you understand the universal law. As much as I put out, I get back.
100%.
So if you seek to mentor and you want to be a millionaire and you're not willing to spend $300 a month on having someone help you, you're never going to be a millionaire in this decade. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen.
That's very powerful. And now the next step I want to talk about is, if there's someone out there that's listening, what are certain habits that they can try and incorporate today to start? Like, what's the most important thing? Like, whether it's praying, what's the most important step that they can
there's a lot. Yeah. There would be a lot, right? And I could pick and choose all over the board principles, habits that they could start. Mm-hmm. But I want to give one. I want to give one very valuable one. Do you know who Marcus Aurelius was?
No.
Long time ago, he was part of the Roman Empire. He was a phenomenal philosopher. In fact, we have his writings today. It's called Stoicism. You've probably heard that word, Stoicism. Yes, yeah. That came from Marcus Aurelius. I mean, it's come from a lot of different people. But Marcus Aurelius, a long time ago, he used to write in a journal. That journal was not meant to be published, but we somehow got it, and it's been published. In that journal, there's all kinds of beautiful philosophies about how men change and women grow and progression and all of these things. And if you read books on it, it's phenomenal. You know, I read a lot of Stoicism stuff. But he teaches a really, really important principle, and it's the one I would tell anybody. If I had a microphone in front of the whole world and I had 5 minutes to tell the world a message that would change their life, it would be really, really simple. He says that a man or a woman should contemplate death on a daily basis. He says the more that we contemplate death, the more perspective we gain. One of the principles I teach, in fact, I taught at Andy Elliott's,
was say that.
was true perspective breeds discipline. We know that a common denominator to success in anything is discipline. So how do I become disciplined? Well, true perspective creates that. And where does true perspective come from? In the beginning of this, I told you that death is the greatest teacher. Well, Marcus Aurelius said that a man or a woman should start their day off in the contemplation of their death and the death of those they love the most. They should also finish the day in contemplation of their death and the death of those they love the most. Now, what does that truly do? Truly. Most people will do this exercise and they'll fall very short because they won't actually fathom it. But if you could fathom it, and I'd walk you through it, what if right now I gave you an hourglass of time that said you have 6 months left to live? This is it. You have 6 months left on this earth. Every decision you make from now until the 6 months will go into the eternities as for your memory and your history. What you say, what you do, who you talk to, you have 6 months left. Now you're married?
Yes.
What if I told you that your spouse had 6 months left to live? How would you interact with her? How would you talk to her? How would you treat her? What would you do? In understanding she has 6 months left. You have an hourglass now that's on your shoulder, that the sand of time is slowly running out. You get 6 months left with her, man. Are you going to fight the way you fight? Are you going to ignore when you ignore? Are you going to love as much as you should love? I don't think you will. If you can put in your mind that death is coming for you and for everyone around you, and it's coming quicker than you think. One of the things Ed Milet said on one of my events, he said, you know, the problem is you think everybody else is going to die. You don't think you're going to die. So you continue your life in ignorance and without urgency, knowing that everybody else is going to die, but I'm not going to die. But if I could contemplate that death, it would change every aspect of my day, everything I say, everything I do. I hold very dear to this. And it's almost to the place where most people who heard this without the explanation would think that it's morbid, would think that it's dark. And it's this. When I wake up, I automatically go into all the things I'm grateful for. And immediately, I contemplate the death of my spouse and the death of my children, which has become easy because my children sometimes crawl in bed with me in the morning. I spend time in that thought. What if today is the last day that I get to see my 2-year-old? What if today is the last time I get to look my spouse in the eyes and tell her I love you? What if this is it? What if tomorrow is my day and they don't get to have me anymore? What is it that I want my children to say about me when I'm gone? What is it I want them to remember and feel when I'm gone? And as I put that into true perspective, I realize everything I do in that day now changes. The minutia, the small things, they don't matter anymore. The fights that I'm having can be resolved quicker. The relationships that I have, they form a bigger and a better bond. Because what if this is the last time that I get to hold my wife? What if it's the last kiss? What if this is the last conversation I get to have? Everything becomes much clearer to me. That clarity breeds perspective. That perspective breeds discipline. And what is the discipline? How do I speak to them? How do I treat them? What do I do? How do I interact with them? What do I say? All of those things change when I realize I have an hourglass. One of the most beautiful things in the whole world, I started mentoring a gentleman who had about $5 million. Every time we mentored, every phone call, it was always business, 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 business. And I repeatedly told him, your marriage is so valuable, you've got to work on your marriage. That's not why I hired you, Keaton. I want you to help me 10x my business. I want you to help me 10x. I want you to help me 10x. I said, okay, but there's things I want you to do. I want you to have conversations with your spouse. I want you to work on your relationship. All of these things. Well, about 2 months ago, I got back on the call with him. Immediately, I knew something was different. Immediately. And he was in tears. And I said, what's going on, buddy? He said, I get it. I finally understand what you were trying to teach me. He said, we got a call from the doctor. My wife has cancer and it's stage 5. And the doctor has told us that she has about 90 to 120 days left. He said, I finally understand what you were trying to teach me. You wanted me to see this before I was actually having to be forced to see it. And I said, okay, what will you do? And he said, well, I'm going to do everything that we originally talked about that I seemed to shrug off. And I asked him a question. I said, how much money matters to you right now? How much does your business matter to you right now? He said, it doesn't matter at all. At all. I said, what are you going to do? He said, well, I got $5 million in the bank. I'm going to go travel the world with my spouse. I'm going to go see everything she wants to see, and I'm going to spend time with her. I got on the call with him about 2 weeks ago. He's a completely different human being. Happier, more at peace. I said, how you doing, buddy? He said, I'm doing so great. I don't think she has much time left. And I said, what are you doing with that time? He said, actually, I sent my 2 daughters and my wife to Australia to a Taylor Swift concert. My 2 daughters want to just spend time with their mother before she passes. So he gained this by being forced into it, which that's sometimes what God does. He forces us into this perspective. I had it with my father. You know, a lot of times people, even people who would be listening, think, I see my parents once a month. I see my parents every 6 months. I see my parents once a year. Well, what if your parents only had 2 years left to live? That means you're going to see them 12 more times, 2 more times, 1 more time. 1 more time is what you have left with your parents. It changes. What you say to them, what you do, how much time and energy you put into it. So if people listening want something that changes everything in your life, you should begin to contemplate death. Because death is the greatest teacher and allows us the perspective that this life is memento mori, is the saying that they use, which means remember that this life is mortal. Remember you only have this much time. If I were to go back and meet God, the only change I think I would make is I would tell him to put an hourglass on every human being. Imagine what this world would be is if we were to walk around and realize how much time every single person has.
Everyone would be happier, richer, and just full of life.
And more successful. And they would be peaceful. They would be joyous. They would be grateful. And they would squeeze every single moment out of every single second that they possibly could. Because there's an end. And that's what this life is. But for some reason we forget that. So my advice, my one piece of advice, maybe the most crucial, you should contemplate death on a daily basis. You should contemplate the death of your children, the death of your spouse. You want to change? You want to grow? Understand you only have an allotted time to do that here. We may not know what's next. We don't. It doesn't matter. We have been given a certain amount of time on
Such a short space of time. My question is, you don't need to do this. Why do you do it? Like, you have it all in your hands. Like, you can just go to an island somewhere and just live happily because your family looks amazing too. Like, why do you do it?
So, back to that universal law of feeling important, something that makes me feel important is to help other people. That's what makes me feel important. A lot of people call it purpose. My purpose has changed. In the beginning, it was to make money. It was to get fame. It was to have a TV show. It was to make money, to be famous, all of those things. And very, very quickly in my life, it changed. It shifted. One of the scriptures in our faith talks about how great should be your joy if you should bring one human or one soul to God. And then the next scripture says, how great should be your joy if you should bring many. And for me, I find my greatest purpose and importance in helping other people. I genuinely love and enjoy it. It's something that gets me up in the morning. It's something that allows me peace. And I'm learning that I'm not able to give my time and energy to the world. So I'm doing my best to do what I can to get in front of the world as quickly as I can, which is one of the reasons why I have my event coming up. Is I have an opportunity to fill an arena with 12,000 people so I can get my message out to 12,000 people in 1 hour. I'll continue to do that because in me, I find importance and purpose in helping other people. I always want to make money. I always want to be successful, but that is now a byproduct of that desire. And that desire is literally what drives me now. I genuinely enjoy watching people become successful. The truth, I hear a lot of times people say there's only one person in your life that wants to see you do better than them, and it's usually your father or your mother, right? I disagree with that. I want to be that person for the world. I want everybody who I come in contact with to be better than me. I want them to succeed better. I want them to be richer. I want them to have everything they want times 10 of anything that I ever created. And I want to be a part of that journey because I find joy and purpose and importance in that. I know that my success will always reflect the success of other people. The more I can make you become successful, the more I ultimately become successful. So in understanding that, that's where I put my head in all things. How can I help those around me to get to where they want? And in doing that, I know that I'm going to get to where I want. And that's why I do it.
That's so powerful. Then the last question we ask all our guests. The podcast is called The Code to Winning. Obviously, insights you need today to seize the world tomorrow. Last question. What is your definition of winning?
I think my definition of winning has changed over the years. It used to be reflected to how much money you have in your bank account, fame, fortune. But my definition of winning has changed to a simple principle. I think happiness is an emotion and it's fleeting. It's all over the place. So to say just to be happy doesn't count. I do think people who are happy are winning, but I think it's a different part and it's peace.
Powerful.
I don't think that a lot of people on this earth experience real peace. And peace comes from doing what you feel is your purpose and what you feel to your core you should be doing. True peace is all the principles and habits that I've talked about, living them. They all give you one thing, a sense of peace. I know a lot of people who are happy who aren't at peace. I know a lot of people who have tons of money who aren't happy or at peace. I know a lot of broke people that are at peace, and I would say that they are winning. My definition of winning is finding true peace in your soul on this earth, and that goes across the board. Why do I feel peaceful in finances? Because I make enough money. Why do I feel peaceful in my marriage? Because my marriage is joyous, it's growing, it's progression. I would say if I were to give one word, it would be peace. Those who feel true peace are winning. And the only other aspect I would add to that, and it's a completely different end of the spectrum, I believe, as we stated, that we are here to become the greatest version of ourselves. And becoming, another word for becoming, is progression. Mm-hmm. True winners only focus on progression. They don't focus on the failure. They don't focus on the win. They focus on one thing, and that is progression. Progression in all things. If you were to come to me and you are stagnant, I don't care where you're stagnant at, you're not winning anymore to me. You were once, even if you're way successful, but you're stagnantly successful, you're no longer winning in my eyes. We see people all the time do really well and then they fall off because they stopped progressing. Those who are at the very bottom and those who are at the very top, winning is tied to progression. So if I know that, I should ask the simple question every day. Did I progress today? I got $10 in my bank account. Cool. Tomorrow I'll have 11. That is true winning.
That's powerful. Keaton Hoskins, thank you so much. So really appreciate it.
Absolutely, brother. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. You have made it this far. Grateful. Thank you very much for joining in the Code to Winning podcast. Please click the like button. It helps with our algorithm as well, including subscribing to the channel and putting the bell notification as well. Like I said, really appreciate you just joining us and tuning in the Code to Winning podcast. The Code to Winning, insights you need today to seize the world tomorrow.